The ore barge Gulliver groaned as if it were dying. Bulkheads creaked on every course correction. The scrubbers were doing their best, but rust-brown dust still hung heavy in the air. Half the deck plates rattled underfoot because no one had bothered to bolt them properly for the last 2 decades, at least. Admiral Elena Cade loved it. She stood near the forward viewport, one hand resting on an exposed strut, and watched the sparkling river of asteroids drift by. Beyond that, the Helix Gate burned like a hanging halo, a spinning ring of white-blue energy big enough to swallow a city. Before the gate, the blockade waited, sitting like a pack of predators. 17 ships of the Avar Dominion, long, blade-like hulls, swept back fins studded with weapon blisters, their running lights a predatory amber. They hung in a staggered shell around the gate's exit vector, every angle optimized, every firing solution overlapping into a single kill web. Any Terran fleet attempting to punch through there would die in seconds. That was, after all, the point. Update, Cade said quietly. Her flag lieutenant, Noor al-Shafi, didn't look up from her flickering console. Light from the holo display painted her sharp features in shifting blue. Refugee column is on final approach, Noor reported. 32 civilian ships, mixed registry. Fuel levels and life support margins confirm they can't go around. They either transit here or they run dry in open space. Cade nodded. She'd seen the raw feeds, crowded cargo holds, families wrapped in thermal blankets, children trying not to cry where the cameras could see. The Avar had broken the defended systems along the frontier in a single brutal push. Anyone who could flee was running for the inner Accord worlds. Except the Avar Dominion had parked a fleet in front of the only working gate. Any change in their formation? Cade asked. Noor pulled up a second holo, showing the enemy's alignment around the Helix Gate. None. Classic Dominion net. Primary battle carrier at the center, designation Spear of Dawn. Heavy cutters on the inner ring, strikers on the outer. All weapons live, all drives warmed. They're not posturing. If the convoy exits straight into that, they'll be vapor before their captains finish screaming. Cade's jaw tightened. And us? The holo pinched and zoomed. Four faint blue motes flared into view, tucked into the ore stream like parasites clinging to a migrating beast. Each mote corresponded to a Terran warship, their hulls painted in irregular, heat-scattering patterns, their emitters dialed down to match the background clutter. Behind the facade of a clanking barge, concealed by a sea of rock and metal, the strike flotilla waited. TSF Resolute, Cade's cruiser. TSF Horizon's Edge, fast destroyer. TSF Sable Wind, stealth frigate. TSF Gauntlet, compact gunship with oversized cannons. On any normal day, those 4 ships wouldn't be enough to scare a Dominion task force, let alone break one. But today wasn't a normal day. Noor's fingers danced over her console. Our drives are cold. Emissions camouflaged as mining thrusters. 2 of our sensors were just part of the ore train. As long as we stay inside the barge's distortion envelope, their long-range sweeps will treat us as background noise. Cade turned away from the sparkling wall of asteroids and instead examined her lieutenant. Noor was young, far too young for the rank she'd earned, but the numbers in her head ran faster than most NAV computers. You're still sure, Cade said, they won't give a second glance to the ore line. The Dominion doctrine is consistent, Noor said. Non-combatant traffic is a nuisance, not a threat. Their historic engagement patterns show a 99.6% tendency to filter out merchant and industrial signals when hunting for military signatures. Cade raised an eyebrow. And the other point 4. Accidents, Noor admitted. Overzealous captains. Short careers. Cade snorted softly. Let's hope the one parked over that gate is a textbook reader. She turned back to the viewport. The Gulliver's old engines rumbled as the barge held course. Somewhere far astern, the refugee column crawled toward the Helix Gate, trying to reach salvation without knowing there was a guillotine waiting. Get me a visual on their flag, Cade said. A separate panel sprang to life, showing the Avar command ship at the center of the web. The Spear of Dawn was ugly in an efficient way. The forward half of it was a spearhead of armored plates and gun barrels, its aft half a cluster of engines big enough to push a small moon. Along its spine, the pitted banners of gold and black were fluttering in a cosmetic magnetic field, showing the Dominion sigils. And that, Nor said quietly, will be him. Avar High Talon Archer Thane, Cade said, recalling the briefings. Veteran of 7 campaigns. Never lost a formal engagement. Famous for reciting their war codes by memory before every battle. A man who lives and dies by his doctrine, said Nor. Good, Cade murmured. Doctrine is predictable. Outside, the hulking or barge inched closer to the kill zone. Inside, hidden in the ore, for Terran warships waited like a knife in a pocket, edges sheathed by rust. On board the Spear of Dawn, the command deck shone like a cathedral built for war. Angular pillars of black alloy rose toward a vaulted ceiling, holographic displays floated between them, showing the helix gate's boiling aperture, the converging refugee convoy, and the invisible volume of space where the Avar net had been woven. High Talon Archer Thane stood at the center of it all, on an elevated dais. His feathers were a storm of dark bronze, his eyes pale and bright. A long ceremonial blade hung at his hip, more symbol than weapon, though no one in the Dominion doubted he could still use it. Report, he said. Gate dilation is stable, High Talon, his sensor chief said, a younger Avar with silver edging his throat plume. Refugee column will emerge from fold within 8 standard minutes. Their escort is negligible. Civilian designs, no Warcrest signatures. Good. Archer's voice carried easily across the deck. Their leaders will learn a simple lesson. You cannot build a frontier and leave your civilians exposed. A low ripple of amused clicks ran through the command staff. Another officer lifted his crested head. We still have that or barge vectoring in along the belt, he said. Yard registry puts it under Terran charter. No armament, reactor signature low. Likely hauling rock for gate refineries. Merchant, Archer said dismissively. Set it to background. If it wanders into the line of fire, it has chosen a poor time for commerce. As you command, the officer said, fingers tapping. The icon for the ore line dimmed on the main display, shunting into a side window. The Dominion's attention narrowed to the gate, the approaching refugees, and the invisible box in which annihilation would occur. Archer laid one clawed hand on the railing before his dais. Remember the code, he said, raising his voice. The bridge fell silent. The enemy comes to our territory uninvited. We do not retaliate with cruelty, but with consequence. Let this be swift and precise, and without malice. He bowed his head. We are the Talon. Not the beak. His officers repeated the last word in hushed tones, not the beak. On the Gulliver, Admiral Elena Cade watched the Avar kill web solidify. Nor, she said. Already tracking, Nor replied. The tactical plot on her console expanded to show the vector cone where the refugees would erupt from fold. We're 3 minutes from the point at which they can detect our true mass profile if they bother to look closely, Nor said. After that, the ore cover won't save us. So we act before they get curious, said Cade. Are our ghosts ready? Nor's lips tightened. Every mining drone the barge carries. Every obsolete NAV buoy in the belt. Every discarded relay husk from the old gate construction. I've loaded a mimic kernel into each. On your mark, we can make this or field look like it's full of warships. Cade nodded once. Mark. Nor tapped a single command key. Over 100 kilometers of space, dead metal came to life. The old drones flickered to life, their transmitters screaming outdated status reports. The abandoned buoys reinitialized, announcing ship positions that didn't exist. The Gulliver's own mast began to broadcast a maelstrom of telemetry in every frequency and format Nor could fake. It was noise to a human ear. To an Avar tactical net tuned to discard nuisance chatter, it was something much worse, corrupted private channels echoing in all the wrong places, signatures of ships that weren't there, pings reflecting off rocks that suddenly looked like cruisers. On the Spear of Dawn, the sensor chief's crest flared in alarm. High Talon, we have. His console howled as half his filters tripped at once. Multiple contacts inside the belt, he yelled. Terran emissions, no, distorted emissions. I'm getting drives in every direction. There are ships above us, behind us. How? Archer snapped. Our outer net is intact, High Talon. These readings are within minimum weapon separation, I cannot resolve true from false. Our targeting lattice is. The main hollow over the dais glitched. The neat lethal geometry of the kill web dissolved into a storm of red and blue icons, some overlapping, others blinking in and out of existence like ghosts. On the bridge of the Resolute, Cade watched the storm sheet unleashed swirl over the enemy formation. They'll shut it out, Nor said. They're not fools. They'll cut everything that looks civilian, everything they think is beneath them. It's their only option if they want to rebuild targeting integrity before the convoy arrives. Which leaves? Cade prompted. Nor's eyes were bright. Their hardened military network only. Their internal battle mesh. No external feeds. No civilian telemetry. Nothing contaminated. Nothing we can reach, Cade said. Smiling faintly, Nor said, except the one node they tied to both. On the tactical hollow, she pointed to a little ship that flew beside the Spear of Dawn. It had a compact hull bristling with antennae and dish arrays. A Dominion relay cutter, Nor said. Military spine with a civilian halo. It doesn't show teeth, so their doctrine treats it as background utility. But every civilian channel in this sector routes through that ship before it hits their core net. Cade's eyes narrowed. You're sure? Simulations say 93%. And if I'm wrong, Nor said, shrugging one shoulder. We've spent all our luck already. Cade's laugh was short and sharp. Resolute to task group, she said. This is Cade. On my fire. Target the relay hull. One shot each, surgical. Do not miss. 3 captains acknowledged. 4 Terran warships powered up their main batteries simultaneously. Their weapon capacitors were singing, hidden in the ore stream, under the barge's electromagnetic noise. Fire, Cade said. The relay ship flickered onto a dozen sensors for the first time that day in the Avar formation. A heartbeat later, 4 lances of white-blue energy tore across space. They concentrated on the unarmored middle of the cutter, at the point where its civilian comm spine joined the hardened core. To Archer Thane's bridge crew, it looked like a single glitching icon, momentarily brightening. Then the relay vessel bloomed into a brief, silent flower of plasma and shredded metal. Across the Dominion net, all infected civilian ghosts disappeared. So did a third of the tactical data they relied on. High Talon, the sensor chief grated. We've lost all external feeds. Military mesh only. Gate telemetry, civilian traffic, deep field relays, gone. Our lattice is blind beyond direct LOS. Archer stared at the tactical display as 4 Terran signatures now burned clean and sharp behind his fleet, just outside the arcs of his primary batteries. Find me their flagship, he said softly. And open me a channel. On the Resolute, the comms officer looked up sharply. Incoming hail, Dominion code. Flag level. Cade nodded. Put him on. An Avar face filled the main screen, bronze feathers, pale eyes, the slight tilt of a head that said I see the knife at my throat and I will not flinch. This is High Talon Archer Thane of the Avar Dominion, he said. His voice, filtered through the translator, was clear and formal. Terran Commander, you have trespassed into our engagement. You stand behind my blades while civilians approach my fire. State your name. Elena Cade, she replied. Admiral, Terran Stellar Fleet. You manipulate ghosts, Archer said. An assassin's trick. Clever. Yet the gate is still under my guns. You are 4 ships. I am 17. 17 that don't know who their real target is anymore, Cade said in an even tone. Your net is when oriented toward an enemy who isn't here yet. We arrived early. The refugees will still emerge into our sights, Archer said. Unless I move, which would give you clean flanks. Unless I hold, which risks their deaths shielding you. You have created a dishonorable geometry. That, Cade said, is the point. The ETA of the convoy ticked down in the corner of the screen, 4 minutes. Let me simplify it for you, High Talon, Cade continued. You can roll your net toward us and fight 4 warships in a proper battle, and in doing so, turn your guns away from thousands of unarmed transports. Or you can hold position and blast refugees apart while we burn out your engines from behind. She bent forward. Either way, you lose something you value. Archer's eyes narrowed. Or, Cade said, we can try something new. New, Archer echoed, the word almost a hiss. The background chatter on the Avar bridge cut off as every officer leaned in unconsciously. He said, you speak of innovation while you hide behind merchants. I speak of outcomes, Cade replied. You care about honor. I care about lives. The universe doesn't particularly care about either of us. So we negotiate. On the deck of the Resolute, Nor looked over at her Admiral. This wasn't the plan of the Sims. The numbers did not like improvisation. But people, Cade had told her, weren't numbers. What do you propose? Archer asked. A contest, Cade said. One that gives your warriors a battle story and my civilians a future. Your sub-commander there that keeps pacing behind you, the one whose crest is about to snap from twitching. Behind Archer, an Avar officer froze in mid-stride, his eyes flashing. He looks like he wants a fight, Cade said. So let him have one. Sub-Commander Vesk stepped forward, crest bristling. You mock the Dominion, he rasped. Even through the filter, Nor could hear the clipped rage. Name your terms, human. Cade kept her eyes on Archer. 1 ship of yours, she said, against 1 ship of mine. Dual engagement. No interference from either fleet. Vesk's crest flared. I will carve. Archer raised 1 talon, silencing him. And the stake, asked the High Talon. Cade smiled without warmth. You win, you keep the gate. You can report to your lords that you drove us off in single combat. You can chase the convoy if you still think you can catch it. You lose, you stand down. You escort those transports through as if it was your idea from the start. You get credit for mercy and control. I get my people home alive. Nor's hand tightened on the arm of her chair. That wasn't in any doctrine, hers or theirs. Archer was still. Around him, his crew shifted uncertainly. Dominion war codes were ancient and multifaceted, but at their heart lay a fundamental principle: a commander may wager his campaign on a measure of worth-1 contest to decide an engagement before it tainted the greater war. It was rarely invoked. It was never invoked by prey. You would bind your fleet to the outcome of 1 duel. Archer asked. Every Terran on my side of the gate, Cade said, is already bound to it whether I admit it or not. This just makes the rules explicit. Silence. Then Archer inclined his head a fraction, feathers rustling. Your war codes are strange, he said. But I recognize the shape. Challenge accepted. Vesk's crest snapped upright. I will go, he said, eager. Let me correct this insult. Archer turned slowly to face him. You are hungry, he said. You crave spectacle more than victory. Good. He touched his subordinate's shoulder in a gesture that was half blessing, half warning. Do not die stupidly. On the Resolute, Cade hit the mute button and turned to Nor. Pick a ship. Nor blinked. Ma'am. 1 against 1, Cade said. I cannot pit the entire fleet in a duel with them, and I need the Resolute where she is, holding a blade on their engines. So. Her gaze sharpened. Who do you trust to dance with an angry bird? The names flicked through Nor's mind. Horizon's Edge had speed, Gauntlet had teeth, Sable Wind had tricks. Sable, Nor said. Commander Ruiz. She's already been thinking about knife-range engagements. Then she has it, Cade said. You have the EW net, Lieutenant. You own their sensors. Help her make it look elegant. Cade opened the channel again. We'll send Sable Wind forward, she said. You send whomever you like. We fight in the clear, 10,000 click box, broadcast to both fleets. So all may witness whose doctrine holds, Archer said softly. Agreed. The formation of the Spear of Dawn rippled and one armored striker detached, engines flaring as it drifted into the designated dueling space. Designation Razor's cry, nor read from the feed. Point defense heavy, forward mass drivers, twin lances. That's a close-range butcher. Perfect, Cade murmured. TSF Sable Wind eased out of the ore stream, her silhouette slim and predatory. Her captain's voice came through the internal channel, steady and a little too casual. Ruiz here, she said. So we're playing knife games with birds now, Admiral. We're showing them the difference between precision and fury, Cade said. Nor will guide. We'll be watching. The dueling box emptied. On both sides, fleet weapons spun down, tracking but idle. Two ships slid toward each other in the empty space between the ore belt and the gate's blistering mouth. Feed from both sides is live, Nor said in a low tone. They're broadcasting to their officers. We're recording for later court-martials if this goes wrong. Cade smiled thinly. No pressure, then. The Razor's cry struck first. Vesk didn't bother with ranging shots or probing attacks, he burned at full thrust, slammed his ship into a tight rotational spin, and unleashed a storm. Mass driver slugs screamed across the duel box in overlapping cones, tracing deadly lattices of metal. Both lances fired in stuttering sequences, trying to bracket the sable wind in sheer volume. Helm, came Ruiz's voice over the dual channel, this man's never met a finesse in his life. 30-degree roll, ventral thrusters, now. On the shared tactical feed, Sable Wind didn't so much dodge as simply, not be where the shots wanted her to be. Small burns, pre-plotted vectors. She slid sideways through Vesk's storm, letting rounds pass within a ship's breadth. Nor, Cade muttered. I'm giving her their targeting lag in real time, Nor whispered back. We still can't hack their core mesh at this distance, but we can read where their guns are trying to look and get ahead of it by half a second. On the Avar side, junior officers stared as their duelists sprayed the box with enough fire to get a cruiser, and hit nothing but empty space. Vesk snarled, crest flaring. He cut thrust, flipped his ship with a brutal maneuver, and fired again, this time leading his target, cutting escape lanes. Impressive aggression, Archer murmured. Nor noticed the pattern on the Resolute, he's heating his guns too fast. Look, power relays are spiking. Ruiz, she said into the dual channel, port 20 degrees, dive, and give him your tail armor for 3 seconds. Say again. Ruiz asked. You want me to show him my engines? Do it, Nor said. Trust me. Sable Wind shifted, angling her armored stern toward the Razor's cry, as if committing a rookie mistake. Vesk bid on that instantly. Focusing his sights on the drives of the Terran frigate, he fired both lances at full power. For 5 glorious seconds, his weapons screamed at full capacity. They carved twin lines of heat across Sable's shields, and then, mid-beam, they sputtered. No heat sinks left, Nor said. He cooked his own emitters. His forward coils are going to need a hard reboot. Then we go, Ruiz said. Guns to surgical, no kill shots. Sable Wind rolled into the fading wake left by the beams, skating along the path Vesk had just cut. She dived under his arcs, slipped across his bow closer than any sane captain would risk, and spat a single volley. Not at his bridge, not at the heart of his hull. Sensors. Thrusters. External radiators. The precision hit chain reacted across the Razor's cry's matte black skin. In mere seconds, Vesk's ship was tumbling, blind and half-crippled. Not dead, crew alive, core intact, but utterly unable to bring a gun to bear. A silence fell on both sides of the engagement. A voice whispered on the Avar bridge, he let them live. No, said Archer, softly. They could have killed. They chose not to. Sable Wind drifted backward in the duel box, keeping respectful distance, nose still pointing at the stricken striker. On the human channel, Ruiz exhaled. Target neutralized. Weapons cold. Nor looked at the timer she had set when Archer had accepted the contest. 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Admiral, she said, we have 30 seconds left on the window. Cade nodded. She opened the private channel she'd left waiting this whole time. Hi Talon, she said. My younger officer had a theory about your fleet. Archer's eyes flicked to one side, towards some unseen display. Outside his ships were already shifting. The tight shell of ambush that they'd formed was stretching, rotating, realigning their vectors not for an attack, but for escort. You bet we couldn't restructure in time, he said quietly. No, Cade said. I wagered that you could. I told her you weren't just a doctrine with a crest. Prove me right in the eyes of your own war codes, and we both win. Archer held her gaze for a heartbeat. Then he raised his talon and barked orders in his own tongue. The Dominion formation turned, across the stars. Through the windows of the refugee liner Arcadia's Wish, the Avar warships looked like nightmares. Sleek, curved blades of blackened metal slipped past in close escort, their running lights a cold amber. Gun ports that could have ripped the liner in half were dark. Engines usually reserved for flanking maneuvers burned gentle, controlled arcs. Inside the main passenger bay, people pressed against the reinforced plastine, staring. Are they protecting us? A child whispered. Her grandfather, a scar down one side of his lined face, stared at the nearest Dominion destroyer. He'd seen footage of those shapes over his homeworld, spitting fire. I think, he said slowly, just this once, they are. The maw of the Helix gate yawned before them, a spinning ring of light large enough to swallow their fear. Passengers didn't see that, beyond the liner's hull, for Terran warships hung at the edge of the convoy, not in formation, not asserting dominance, simply, watching. Holding a line. On the TSF Resolute, Admiral Elena Cade stood with her hands folded behind her back, her eyes on the combined armada. Avar and Terran ships, hostile fleets in any other context, now formed layers around fragile civilians, Dominion cutters inward, human cruisers on the outer shell. A shot now would evoke a return fire, writing a new chapter of horror. Nobody did. Last of the column entering the halo, nor reported. Her voice was rough with fatigue, but there was a fierce satisfaction in it too. Transit signatures are clean. Gate control acknowledges safe tunneling corridor. Cade nodded. And our official story? Ready for upload to the Helix relay, Nor said, a wry twist to her mouth. Filed under Dominion origin, authenticated by their command codes. She tapped a key, and a pre-written report scrolled briefly up her display. By order of High Talon Archer Thane, Avar Dominion Task Force at Helix Gate successfully interdicted a Terran raiding flotilla attempting to endanger refugee traffic. After formal contest of arms, the human flagship was disabled and placed under Avar guns. In a show of sovereign restraint, the Dominion then chose to shepherd the civilians through the gate under honorable escort, establishing uncontested control over the approach. No mentions of or fields full of ghosts. No details of a duelist spared in front of his peers. No record of a human admiral wagering everything on the peace of an enemy's soul that believed in something more than victory. Cade slowly exhaled. Suitable for their choirs? Yes, Nor said. Their news choruses will sing of merciful dominion. Ours will talk about successful convoy exfiltration under adverse conditions. And the duel? Cade asked. Nor glanced at a separate file, heavily encrypted. That recording stays in our War College archives, she said. Under classification, case study, duel at Helix. Cade smiled faintly. Good. Let our future captains learn that you don't have to paint space with bodies in order to win. The last refugee ship vanished into the light of the gate. For one instant, the Helix aperture seemed almost vacant. Then its inner ring flared, and the column re-emerged far away, in a safer system, where no Dominion gunweb waited. On the Spear of Dawn, Archer watched his tactical display confirm every civilian signature clearing the far side. Gate control confirms positive transit, his navigator said. All transports accounted for. Terran escorts holding position. They've made no move to follow. Signal them, Archer said. A moment later, Elena Cade's face appeared on his forward screen. "We are clear," Archer said. Cade inclined her head. "Then our agreement is fulfilled." Behind Archer, Sub-Commander Vesk was standing at rigid attention, his crest forcibly still. His ship floated in the duel box, scarred but alive. Engineers were already swarming over its hull. "You humiliated my subordinate," Archer said. "He humiliated himself," Cade said calmly. "We just pointed a light at it." Archer's feathers rustled, the closest thing his species had to a rueful snort. "Our war codes will say that I captured your flagship and chose not to shatter you. Mine will say we saved the convoy," Cade replied. "They'll both be true in a way that matters." Archer studied her for a long breath. "You are dangerous, Elena Cade," he said. "Not because of your guns. Because you understand the weight of stories." "So do you," she said. "Or you'd have fired anyway." A pause. Then, very slowly, High Talon Archer Thane lowered his crest, not in abject submission, but in a measured, deliberate angle of respect reserved for those outside the Dominion who had proven unexpectedly worthy. Cade didn't know the full ritual weight of the gesture, but she knew sincerity when she saw it. She answered the gesture with the simple human nod that had carried 1,000 peace treaties and truces through history. The channel closed. The Avar fleet broke away from the gate, its engines bright and its formation tight. Back toward their war, back to their lords, their endless doctrine. For a time, the Terran flotilla drifted in the quiet between gate pulses. Nor exhaled and finally sagged back in her chair. "Admiral," she said, "mathematically speaking, that should not have worked." Cade shrugged. "Math doesn't factor in what a proud man does when you offer him a way to walk away with his head high." Nor looked at her admiral, really looked, and saw the fatigue in the lines around her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. "You could have destroyed them," said Nor. "Maybe," Cade said. "At a cost measured in more than hulls. We're not here to prove we can kill. We know that already. We're here to prove we can choose not to, and still win." Beyond the viewport, Helix Gate turned slowly, its light washing across scarred metal and painted hulls. The ore barge Gulliver rumbled as her autopilot made a correction for some minor drift, as indifferent to galactic politics as Rock always was. As the intercom on Arcadia's wish announced safe arrival in a new system, in the bay for passengers, a small boy caught hold of his mother's sleeve. "Will the scary ships follow us?" he asked. His mother kneeled, still shaken by the sight of alien war hulls sliding past in silent escort. "No," she said softly, "they have their own battles to fight." "Did we win?" he asked. She thought of the burning worlds they'd left, the gate filled with guns, the unexpected parade of enemies turned guardians. She smiled faintly. "We're alive," she said. "That's a kind of winning." Far behind them, at the edge of the Helix system, four Terran ships turned away from the gate, their engines brightening as they set a course for the next impossible task. Because that was what humanity did, in the end. They looked at traps and didn't just escape. They rewrote the rules of the game, and somehow, walked away with both their people and their principles intact.